Hey guys, it's Mathel here once again with not necessarily my build, but kind of a collaboration of someone else's and mine, kind of put together. And this time around, I am building Static Strike as a Quin69 build. So he had the concept of Static Strike with Brutus led Sprinkler, so strength stacking, getting a lot of fire as an Inquisitor. And then the idea is that Static Strike currently has a couple of powerful mechanics in that you can use Intimidating Cry to get your next attack do double damage, which means you attack with Static Strike, and then the duration of your Static Strike beams will also do double damage off of that one attack. So if you get your Intimidating Cry up well enough, often enough, all of your beams and your Static Strike should be doing double damage. On top of that, you can use Hydrosphere to attach an additional chain to a boss when attacking right next to the Hydrosphere, or when attacking and chaining off of the Hydrosphere. Thus, you should be kind of like doubling your damage with Intimidating Cry and then possibly doubling it again on the boss. Now, he played this character up to about level, I don't know, 90 something, and ended up dying well before he could realize its true potential. And I thought it was an interesting enough concept that didn't really get realized as much as he would have liked, that I'd take it upon myself to make a full softcore version of that sort of thing. So in core concept, we're still using Static Strike and, Intimidating Cry and Hydrosphere, which is pretty much just how Static Strike should be done right now, or any way to play Static Strike is more or less going to be the most efficient to do something like this. Whether or not you're doing Inquisitor, Strength Stack, however you want to scale it, isn't going to be necessarily the right way. That's just one way of doing it. And I wanted to try and take his and just go on full trade, full softcore mode. So, fucking 10 times more damage because I can afford to buy everything I need, and I can afford to die plenty of times. And trust me, I've been doing plenty of that. So the character is Brutus-led Sprinkler, meaning we stack a lot of strength, so getting 7k life is typically pretty easy on these builds, but we are still a little bit squishy because I'm wearing a replica Abyssus. It's too good for this build not to wear, but we do have a little bit of defense to counteract it here or there, and just a quick little sort of example of one of the things that a ritual can do here where I die. It got pretty ridiculous. Either way, so Static Strike is actually a pretty viable and good attack at the moment if you can scale enough of the damage, the duration, the crit, whatever it is. All in all, it ends up being a pretty hotly contested clear-based skill. So what happens is you get enough duration, or at least even the base duration. I currently have the 4-second base duration for the beams, and you can attack once and then just zoom through a few packs. It becomes a very auto-bomber type playstyle, and if you stack a bit more duration, if you use the Helm enchant, you could attack once and then zoom through packs for like 8 seconds and just blow everything up, and it'd be pretty beefy indeed. This here in the background is a Cortex, the first actual piece of endgame I had to do on the character, and it was forced a bit early before I was fully ready because it was from a Zana map. Now this Cortex has like 130 extra fire damage, so that's why I got hit so hard at the start, since I am also wearing an Abyssus and take a bit of extra LE damage. But I'm just testing out the single target, and ultimately it's pretty decent for what it is. Static Strike isn't supposed to be super good single target damage, but if you snapshot that Intimidating Cry, if you have your Hydrosphere next to him, it does have some potential to do some beefier damage. Likewise with Ruthless procs, when we use Ruthless, on that Ruthless hit with your Static Strike, the beams will also be doing the Ruthless amount of damage, as long as you don't refresh with some other scuffed attack. Which we often do, it doesn't really matter. So you can tell the difference between some of the hits when boss just starts chunking huge damage, and that's typically when we get everything lined up with the Ruthless, with the Hydrosphere, and some big damage starts to happen. All in all, Static Strike is looking somewhat viable at the moment. Like I said, this isn't necessarily the way to build it. You could do a pure Fizz version that goes into conversion, stacks some extra damage, doesn't have to be an Inquisitor, got one shot by that bullshit mechanic with the extra fire damage, fuck off. It could also be, I think, potentially, probably the best way and easiest way to scale a nice late game one, a Void Forge build. I've done one of those before, Static Strike Void Forge, and I think right now it's probably the best way to do a Static Strike overall. Or you could do something like this, because Shield Charge is pretty damn nice to get through packs and trigger your zooming abilities with the Static Strike explosions and stuff. In any case, let me jump into how I've built the character so far and see how it's geared. There's our character so far called Quin's Mavenkill, level 90 Inquisitor. I'm just going to get him his Mavenkill for him. Maybe. I don't know. It's looking a bit dicey as an Inquisitor with the replica Abyssus. And Static Strike. It is decent, but I'm not 100% sold on its endgame single target just yet. At least the way I like to kill Mavens and stuff, which is a good old-fashioned brute force. Okay, so based around this weapon, big old strength stack. Now bear in mind, if you're going to try and do anything like this, strength stack and getting him to the min-max levels, pretty expensive or hard to do. Especially since harvest is the main way that we craft stuff right now for real good min-max potential. And stats are really hard to min-max around with harvest. Since you can't like force them on, force them off, that sort of stuff, usually it's going to be pretty tough. So it involves a bit of RNG, a lot of just like mindless sort of spam as opposed to like targeting things. So a lot of my gear is somewhat decent, but a lot of it's just, you know, through sheer force of chaos spam as opposed to like trying to make exactly what I need. And then you can finish it off with like harvest crafting here or there. But strength stack, we get a lot of additional fire out of this with 1700 strength. I'd say if you're going to do something like this, 1500 strength is around where you should be aiming for, and then any higher is some pretty good stuff. But the idea is get a lot of this extra fire. We're an Inquisitor, so it doesn't matter what LE we do. So we've got some lightning, we've got some Abyssus action for all kinds of other stuff. Herald of Ice for some extra cold. So our damage spread does kind of exist in other dimensions, but it's mostly fire. The cold is there to also help freeze a lot of things, and it feels pretty good as an Inquisitor to freeze everything around you. So then, of course, Replica Abyssus also has a bit of strength, pretty good stuff. 40 increased daily damage taken, so hopefully just a bunch of life, some Fortify action, using this little Ascendancy node. Nearby enemies deal less LE damage, and this Pantheon that's upgraded helps us mitigate some level of elemental damage against, you know, a big single hit through endgame boss fights, typically, hopefully. Fuck. But otherwise, the gear, well, it's your typical strength stack stuff. We got a shield with some strength and Warcry cooldown recovery, because I'm trying to make sure that Intimidating Cry is about as quick as it can be, so that every single static strike I'm hitting, even if I'm doing it too often, is going to be Intimidating Cry. And currently, it's down to a 3-second cooldown. So you can see 3-second cooldown with 3 attacks means it should be up pretty much always. I think I've even gone too hard on it, and you probably don't need Warcry cooldown recovery, or maybe even the Exerted Anoint. Now there are plenty of cool new items thanks to Synthesis Basis around Ritual and Heist and all that. So getting a synthesized amulet with a base of 13 to 15 strength isn't that expensive to start with, and that's on average going to be better than one that you're going to craft through using influenced bases and trying to fish for the percent strength, because this is already a locked in big strength, and then all you really need is a strength roll, maybe some other shit, see what you can get. But it is still kind of going to be mindless chaos spam. So a base like this, I think was, I don't know, 5-10C or some shit. A huge base like this with 18% strength again, so a 13 to 15% strength. These guys are like 1C, 2C, some shit like that. With the fire damage modifier as well, I paid 12C for this one, since it is only eye level 70. And then I just use essences of strength to try and get something, and eventually you get that. So getting strength implicits are pretty damn worth doing on these sorts of bases, and they're cheap at the moment. Then got Hunter Boots, Chaos Spam till I saw double strength roll. There it is. And hit a life roll, so then crafted some movement speed. Bought these gloves because I specifically needed a bunch of accuracy, strength, then, bit of life or some shit. Bought this ring, bunch of accuracy, strength, and bought this ring, bunch of accuracy. So these aren't very expensive, they're not very good or anything, but they fill a niche that I really need. I'm still working on crafting an Assassin Mark ring, because I think that is going to be pretty crucial, and it will replace this one. Ideally, I'm going to need an Assassin Mark ring with minus mana cost, since I don't have any leech for mana, and I basically survive off of a bit of regen. 1 minus mana craft is enough to sustain me for like all my mana needs. I could even replace this strength and dex over here, and then craft minus mana as a prefix on some other ring that has a bit of life to begin with. So we have to see how it goes, but Assassin Mark should be pretty big damage boost, so I'm going to definitely need to squeeze that in. And then a chest, you can grab a 6-link Elder Astral all-white base that people have been printing through Bestiary, but not that much. I don't know how much I paid for this, like fucking 1x, something like that. It's ridiculous. And then just chaos spam until something good happens, and in this case, double strength roll with a life roll, can craft spare life onto it. I only just then put on chaos res onto it, but yeah, life goes back onto this. I'll even do it right now just so that it looks a little bit more complete. 75, 79, 73. We'll take 80 for the time being. So we're over 7k life pretty comfortably. Yeah, double strength roll there. Can still go way harder. Can have an attack crit roll on there just through using craft attack, craft crit, something like that from harvest. All pretty good stuff. So that's the gear set, bunch of strength. And the passive tree tries to go out its way to get a bit of strength, but it's mostly just an exert sort of Warcry recovery cooldown thing, and then a bunch of mace stuff to get good LE damage, good crit. So crit stuff for the mace is there, some crit mace stuff there, crit over here, a bunch of life. Got the additional attack, very important for Static Strike to feel good. Ideally, you get it on your gloves as well, but it's pretty damn hard to get good gloves that have additional attack and strength. So I'm just making do with 1 additional attack, but if you can get 2, it makes it so much smoother because you'll be hitting things from further away, guaranteeing that you keep up your Static Strike beams. Instant Warcry, bunch of strength. Our jewels are basically bunch of crit multi, and this shit's like 10C or something. Sweet ass. There's plenty of crit multi things to go around. This one's a piece of shit, but I've still got to replace it. And then a Lethal Pride. Just grab one of these. Divine Spam till you get something good happening. Ideally, some multi, some strength. So we have 5% strength roll here. And the entire reason I've taken these 2 nodes is because my Lethal Pride gives another 5% strength. Otherwise, they're not really worth taking. These are barely worth taking as well, but if they've got some good stuff, then by all means get it. As for a large cluster, went with a shield one, and I was trying to ideally get martial prowess because I need some % accuracy for the build, and then whatever else I could get, strike leader in this case, just a bit of extra damage, and then I rolled some strength small cluster jewels. This one has strength, life or res, and vicious guard. So that's where I get my life leech from. So you can get your life leech from the large cluster, you can get life leech from Lethal Pride, you can get life leech from a Feast of Flesh. Otherwise, the idea is to roll for Wall of Muscle, but they are pretty hard to roll and fairly rare. So I got this one after a bunch of Alt Regal sort of spamming, even some imprinting action, and Wall of Muscle is what we did. For the Ascendancy, your first 4 points, definitely all this shit. Get lots of good strength and crit out of this node. Battle Mage actually works for us because it triggers off of Hydrosphere and Dash. So you will have 30% more attack damage almost always, since our playstyle definitely revolves around dashing plenty and then pressing Hydrosphere. So it will always give you that 30% more damage. Just about always. And then there's less damage taken node. So you can, for obvious reasons, go for the entire Pious Path route, go for big regen and stuff like that in this sort of thing, but I wasn't really going to have any energy shield or much regen, so fuck it. I went for the big ultimate YOLO softcore play. Trying to make sure that Quin's build, Quin's idea, has maximum DPS, and we'll see how it goes from there. The links that I'm currently rolling are Divergent Static Strike. This one has an additional chain, but reduces your damage by 40%. So it's not 40% off of everything, it's just 40% like, you know, missing increased damage, for example, and the additional chain. If we didn't have this for the additional chain, I'd probably have to map with a chain support, potentially. I doubt it'd matter too much, but it's just a bit of extra clear. Otherwise, most of our clear, once again, like with the Chieftain, coming from the Shockwave support, explodes, pretty much just crushes everything, does proc off of the beams, so it feels pretty good. We then have early damage attacks, Pulverize, Inspiration, and Ruthless. Like I said, you can snapshot off of that Ruthless to then have the big extra damage for all the beams. Over here is faster attacks, Inspiration, Fortify, and Shield Charge. That's just to keep up Inspiration charges easier, because their attack speed does kind of suck on the Static Strike. Blood and Sand, Stone Golem, Hydrosphere, currently attached to nothing. Ancestral Protector, Multi-Totem, War Chief. Once again, I love my double totem setup that gives both buffs. Vitality, Precision, and Hero Device. And Intimidating Cry, Blood Rage, Second Wind, and Dash. Now this is a pretty good character, I think, overall. Pretty fun to play, but strength stack, it's hard to build as an Inquisitor. It's pretty hard to build. You will be challenged on resists, accuracy, dexterity, LE damage, crit multi, attack speed. It's going to be challenging. If you want a much easier version of Static Strike, I do recommend going for Void Forge. I've got an old one from a while back that you can use as kind of a template, but you'd be using just a regular Abyssus, and then instead of a replica, and then Void Forge, scaling all this flat fizz and crit multi. It's something to look into. I think Static Strike is pretty neat with the duration. You can scale, you can grab some duration nodes these here, and these here. You can grab the duration enchant on your helm. You can use duration in your links, and it can be a good big clear speed thing. But this is an attempt at trying to go full softcore on a Quin build to see if his ideas truly have lots of merit. And I think in this case, definitely is something to look into. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.